This episode of the Everything Matters podcast is brought to you by BeLegendary.coach, where we transform leaders into legends. Are you a senior leader, entrepreneur, or executive looking to take your leadership to the next level? Are you dealing with things such as imposter syndrome, concerns with whether or not your leadership is lingering long after you've completed face time? Looking for new and innovative ways to connect with your team and to gain buy-in from stakeholders that you deal with on a daily basis? If any of this sounds like something that you're dealing with and you would like to take your leadership to an extraordinary level, your effectiveness to a legendary level, visit BeLegendary.coach. That's www.belegendary.coach and schedule your free performance analysis today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of the Everything Matters podcast. This is episode 30. This is monumental. So if you're loving and finding value for your life in the content that we're producing, you're invited to please like and share the content, and we'd love to have you as a subscriber to the channel. Everyone loves a great story, right? And my guest today has an extraordinary one to share with us. Things didn't begin out for him in the way that any child would like, and neither would most parents, I would argue. Unfortunately, none of us have any control over the parents nor the situations that we're born into when entering this world. Hi, I'm Bradford Speaks, affectionately known as Coach B. I'm the founder and CEO of BeLegendary.coach, a performance coaching and leadership development company where we transform leaders into legends. Coach Michael Taylor. Coach Michael is an entrepreneur and author of almost a dozen books. He's a motivational speaker and a radio show host who has dedicated his life to empowering men to reach their full potential. Michael knows firsthand how to overcome adversity and build a rewarding and fulfilling life. Coach Michael was born in the inner city projects of Corpus Christi, Texas, to a single mother with 6 children. Although he dropped out of high school in the 11th grade, his commitment to living an extraordinary life is what supported him in defying all the odds. Persistence, patience, and perseverance are what has driven his success and undergirds his passion to share his life lessons to heal and inspire others. At the behest of a terribly painful divorce, Coach Michael faced the humiliation of bankruptcy and foreclosure. Alone and homeless, he actually contemplated suicide, but ultimately he would choose life. Today, he will talk to us about his latest mission and his book, which are intended to shatter the black male stereotypes that surround black men in America and around the world. So please join me in welcoming Coach Michael Taylor to the Everything Matters podcast. Coach Mike, let's get it popping, brother. Coach Michael Taylor, man, welcome to the Everything Matters podcast, brother. So great to see you, man, and so great to have you here. I'm so inspired by the things that you're up to, man, and supporting the communities that you want to support. And I want to start this podcast off, Michael, by first of all talking about how we met. So I was in Houston visiting my mom for a couple of weeks and spending some time with her and my sisters out there. And I was at this little coffee shop just outside of Houston in the Katy area. And I see Michael walk in with this like entourage of folks, and he's got like boxes of books in there. I'm like, what is going on? I got a celebrity coming in. What's going on? And everybody's welcoming you. You're coming in, taking pictures and everything. And I'm like, okay, this guy looks like somebody that obviously I need to talk to. So I'm just kind of observing. I'm sitting there on my laptop doing some work, and you and I start a conversation, and you tell me what you're up to, and you're promoting several of your books that you have. I think you've written 4 books at this point, and you're promoting your books, man, and your purpose and what you're out to cause in the world, man, the difference that you're out to make. And I was so inspired. We started a conversation, man, and I invited you to come onto the podcast. And it took us a while to get here, but we're finally here, man. So again, thank you for being here and welcome.
Well, it is my absolute pleasure. And I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And
facts.
Our paths have crossed for a specific reason. I'll call it divine synchronicity because I love what you're about. Everything does matter. Awesome. And especially when it comes to black men. And I'm always looking for collaborations with other brothers who are sharing positive information, or what I call empowerment conversations. And so I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Awesome, man. Great. So, Michael, so a lot of people might not know who you are. I know a little bit about you because of conversations that we've had. But, I want to give all the listeners an opportunity to get a chance to have an intimate view of who you are, man. We have some sense of what you're about, shattering stereotypes, the T-shirt you're wearing today, right? We're going to talk more about that. But I want to give you just a 30-second elevator pitch on,
where's Michael Taylor come from? You know, what's where'd you grow up? You know, what was the things that made your life special and unique and maybe guided you down this path? Just tell us a little bit about yourself and really what you're up to and what you're committed to.
Well, I was born in Corpus Christi, and we were basically the poster children for poverty back in the 60s. And when I was in the 11th grade, I dropped out of high school because I convinced myself I could get rich selling vacuum cleaners, which was a poor choice. But I was fortunate enough to land a job with this building supply center. I worked really hard, climbed the corporate ladder, and became the youngest manager in the history of that company. And so at the age of 23, I was living the American dream. You know, I had the house, the wife, the 2.5 kids and all of that. And within about a 6-year time frame, I lost it all. And so I went on this amazing journey of transformation. And what I decided to do was take the lessons that I learned during that transformational process and share those lessons with others. And that's when I began writing and speaking.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Writing and speaking. You speaking my language right there. Something that I'm really passionate about myself. So let's just dive right in, Mike, man. Thanks for giving us that background. Corpus Christi, Texas. I think I've been there maybe once. In the poster child for poverty and how you were able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it sounds like. Vacuum cleaners. I'm curious. What's the name of those vacuum cleaners that we used to sell back in the day?
Rainbow.
Rainbow. So you were selling Rainbow, huh?
Yeah. Well, again, I went to this seminar, right? I'm in the 11th grade. I go to this seminar.
Yeah.
And this guy's on stage, man, and he's all fired up. And I'm like, dang, I can do that, man. I know I can do that. Man, I never sold a single vacuum. I never sold a single vacuum cleaner. But you know, there was a powerful lesson in that. And what I learned from that is I've never been afraid to take risk. And that's a good attribute to have, a good value quality to have, because I've always been that way. I've always set a vision for myself and willing to pursue whatever that vision is. But I always believed in myself enough to say, you know what, I can pull that off. So that's a really good trait to have, even though that was a poor choice back then.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I agree. I think, and really, if you look at it, it maybe wasn't the poorest choice. Maybe it was something that helped give you that confidence and that courage to take that risk, right? So really, no matter what happens in life, and I know we're going to get into some of this stuff because you and I sort of think alike. No matter what happens in life, like you said, everything happens for a reason. Everything has its own purpose, right? So you taking that job and making the decision to drop out of school was a very bold and courageous choice. If you really think about it, I mean, to be 17, 18 years old and saying, hey, I can create my own path. Dude, that takes courage. Yeah. You know, that's something that takes something, man. Most kids don't do that, you know, and saying, Mom and Dad, I got this, you know, I'm you know, and just let the chips fall where they may, and you landed on your feet. So you learned a lot. And, you know, I always tell young people, like, I think one of the best decisions you can make is to get into door-to-door sales. I mean, dude, even if you never sold one, the fact that you had the courage and the wherewithal to step up to somebody's door or call somebody on the phone and you don't know anything about and have a conversation with them about buying something, man, that sets you up. If you talk to most successful millionaires, a lot of them have started out in that space, right? Yeah. And you got a ton of value out of it, man. So, hey, it made you open to having a conversation with me, and that's how we're here today.
There you go. Well, again, you know? I do believe everything happens for a reason, and I can see, actually, as I reflect back over my life and looking at it from a spiritual perspective, I can see how every event in my life has led me to where I am right now.
There it is.
And I believe every adversity, every challenge we have in our lives actually brings us a gift and a lesson if we're willing to look deeply enough. And Great. So, again, I can see those lessons, and it is what propels me to do what I do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, man, I want to jump right in, Mike, if that's okay with you, man. Let's talk about the shirt you have on right now, Shattering the Stereotypes, you know, and I know that you have a platform with that namesake, Shattering the Stereotypes. You know, and it's interesting because I don't know if you ever heard of the guy. I think we may have talked about when we first met, Kevin Samuels. Kevin was a YouTuber sensation. A lot of people didn't agree with his approach and his tactics and the way he did things. He started out coaching men in a pretty, some people might say, really rough, tough love kind of way, right? But there have been so many people whose lives have been impacted by the work and the message that he gave, even in his death. So many people have been moved. People have gotten married. People have gotten their families back together. So many positive things have come out of that. And so since his coming and passing, I've seen a lot of people stepping up and supporting men. And so it's one of the things that I'm really intrigued by what you do, is because I think that men have been sort of downplayed, you know, particularly black men. And even white men, to be honest with you, you know, the male the masculine energy has been really suppressed, I feel. And it is a necessary part of society and having a balance in society. And we can't have that happen. So talk to us about your platform, Shattering the Stereotype, man, and why you started that, what it's all about.
Well, first of all, it is my belief that the greatest challenge we have in the world today is to redefine manhood and masculinity. And that is actually my area of expertise, if you will. I've written several books and done workshops and so forth, because I believe that the current paradigm of masculinity is no longer sustainable. And the reason I say that is if you look at the progress that women have made not only in the United States, but around the world, if you look at the progress they've made, women decided when the feminist movement started that, okay, so we don't want to just stay home barefoot and pregnant. We want careers, we want this. And now in America today, a lot of people don't realize it, but there are more women in the workforce than men. There are also more women graduating from college than men. So women took this challenge and said, look, we want equality. We want to do our own thing. Well, as women progressed, if you will, a lot of men haven't embraced these changing roles for women. So for us as men, we look at things like, we were taught that as men, we have three primary responsibilities, what I call the 3 Ps, procreate, provide, and protect. Okay. That's what, as men, we've been conditioned to believe were our responsibilities. Now, the problem is, as men, we were taught to protect, but we were never taught how to connect. And what that means is, as men, we have to learn how to get in touch with our emotions, our feelings, because that's how we connect. And that's really difficult for a lot of men because they're stuck in this old paradigm that says this is what a man's supposed to be. So what I do is I challenge men to look at and embrace these new ideas about masculinity and manhood. Now, as it pertains to Black men, I have to go back to 1994. I was in a restaurant and I overheard this conversation between these two apparently well-educated, well-spoken professional Black men. And they were having a conversation about the eradication of Black men from society. And it was one of the most depressing conversations I've ever heard. I mean, these brothers were throwing out statistics and all this. And so I listened for a moment. I walk over to their table. I apologize for eavesdropping. I said, man, but please tell me you don't believe what you just said. And his brother looked at me and he said, absolutely, I believe everything I just said. And he said this, don't you watch the news? He said, I believe in 20 years, all Black men will either be dead or in jail.
Wow.
And when he said that, it broke my heart, first of all, because I could feel the powerlessness in his voice. I mean, I could feel this brother had just basically given up, that he couldn't succeed as a Black man in America. Now, I knew there was nothing I could have said that would have changed his mind. So I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, don't believe the hype, my brother, don't believe the hype. And I walked away. But as I was walking away, there was a part of me that said, Michael, you have to do something. Now, at the time, I had absolutely no idea what I needed to do, but I knew that I wanted to do something to change the mindset of Black men. Now, during this time, my life was in total chaos. I'd gone through my divorce, bankruptcy, foreclosure. So who was I to say or believe that I could do something, right? Right. But after I went on this amazing journey of transformation, I remembered that conversation in that restaurant. And then it hit me. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to write a book. Now, I had no background in writing. Like I said, I was a high school dropout. Who was I to say I could write a book? Well, back then you didn't have the internet and all of that. So it was an amazing journey to figure out. I actually got a job at a bookstore to learn about the publishing industry because I got so many rejections for people who wouldn't publish my book. So I say all that to say that my work is about male empowerment. And again, I focus on Black men because actually I'm a man who happens to be Black, but it's really not about ethnicity. It's really about, just like you said, it's about changing the paradigm of manhood and masculinity, because when we do that, we can change the world. Wow. Man, you said a mouthful there, Michael. I'm not even sure where to start dissecting that. I agree with you. I think that certainly, and it's a question of, I think, are we, I think the question often comes up of what we're wired to do and what we're conditioned to do or conditioned to be, right?
And there's a lot of argument and research and people that will argue the side of where men are just wired differently than women. And I do believe that's true. I do believe that from a hormonal perspective and from a neurological perspective, there is that protecting piece that comes up, that's going to protect his family. And he has the physiological aspect to do that. And the attitude, like the level of strength and anger that comes up in a man when he feels that his family's been violated. A woman, it's different. Not saying that a woman doesn't get upset and the woman will protect her kids. I've seen women jump in front of a car to protect their family, protect their kids. So don't get me wrong on that. Men are wired differently. We're built differently. And there is, I think that the 3 Ps are absolutely valid. No question about it. The connect piece, though, is certainly a missing. And so I'm wondering is that something that's neurological? Is it something that's just in the way that we're wired? Or maybe we just connect differently, and that women and men need to get on the same playing field and really listen to each other and how they want to connect, And I do think that over time, whatever ability to connect and whatever we've been conditioned to think or believe that our role is in society has certainly been lost. And I think it's been deteriorated to a large degree. Now, I will say that, I don't have such a dismal outlook as the guys that were sitting at that table back in 1994, as you spoke about. However, I can't sit up here and say that I don't see a huge impact of the time that I grew up in. And I know you saw some of it too, of the crack era, because personally, I've got a ton of friends who are either dead or in prison, had 15 kids with 10 different women, and some guys are still in prison or spent stints in prison and got out and had to restart their life all over again. And if you know anything about the prison system, it's very difficult as a felon, not impossible, however, very difficult as a felon to be able to migrate back into society and to start building a life. Again, not impossible. I've seen guys come out, go drive trucks, become great family men, and turn their lives completely around. It's totally possible. And the work that you're doing, I think, makes that more feasible and more available to men. So there's definitely been an impact, no question about it. Now, the complete eradication, that I'm not sure about, because there are a lot of black men that are thriving. However, again, I think my generation, I saw something very disturbing growing up as a teenager and even through my 20s and 30s about guys that I grew up with who got into the dope game. Not to say that there weren't choices. They made choices to do that, but they got into it, got involved because it became so provocative. Even with today's rap music, it glorifies the certain lifestyle that a lot of our young men are gravitating to, and it ends up in their death and demise, which is, again, very discouraging and scary. So I think the work that you and I do is critical around that.
Well, I would have to disagree on a couple of points.
Okay.
First of all, I actually don't believe men and women are wired differently. And here's what I mean. Here's what I mean by that. We live in a culture, and not just black culture, but a male culture that has conditioned men to believe that it's not okay to feel. We're taught that women have feelings and that it's okay for women to express those feelings. When it comes to men, our conditioning is that as men, we suppress, repress, and deny our emotions because we have to have this protection that says, I'm a man, I'm supposed to be tough, I'm supposed to be strong. So if you look at the conditioning from an early age, we hear things like big boys don't cry, don't be a sissy, don't be a punk. So what happens is, as men, we begin suppressing, repressing, and denying our basic human emotions. Now, as human beings, we have 4 primary emotions: mad, glad, sad, and afraid. 4 primary emotions, okay? Every other emotion is a offshoot of one of those 4. As men, a lot of us aren't comfortable when we start talking about sadness. We aren't comfortable talking about fear because we've been conditioned to believe to always be tough and rigid, and we repress those parts of ourselves. Well, what happens is when we do that, we aren't able to create connection. Because in order to be relational, you have to be emotional. Now, I possibly had the worst childhood a child could have. From the age of 6 to 13, I was in a literal hell. Every imaginable type of abuse. Now, as I grew up, again, climbed the corporate ladder, was successful in society standard. But after my divorce, I decided and I gained the courage to go to therapy because I had some deep, deep depression that I couldn't pull myself out of. Well, it was through therapy that I learned how my abusive childhood was impacting my life as an adult.
Absolutely.
So I had to be willing to heal some of that. Well, as a man, that's a really difficult, challenging thing to do because we have such a negative stigma of talking about stuff, right? And in the Black community, what do we usually do? We say, well, Jesus can fix it. Let's pray about it.
Right.
But you got to look at the science behind it. And psychology is simply the science of the mind. So if you look at the psychology, if you look at the psychological impact of trauma and what that trauma has on our ability to express who we are, that's the foundation of most of the challenges in our lives, especially as men. Because as you were saying earlier, women are wired differently, but in reality, they really aren't when it comes to emotions. Emotions are just energy in motion. It's just our body's way, our spirit's way of expressing what's true for us. They aren't right or wrong. They just are. It's just feedback.
Right.
But what happens is we live in a culture that says, as men, don't express how you feel. Number one, the reason we don't want to do that because we don't want to appear gay, right? It's like, oh no, that's something gay people do.
Right.
But again, feelings aren't gay. Feelings are part of who we are. But what we do is we suppress, repress, and deny. And again, this starts very, very early.
Oh, yeah.
And so, again, I'm a science guy. I love science. I love data. And this is what I've learned from my own research and experience. When I went through my divorce, after my divorce, I had a really difficult time creating relationships, right? There was an amazing pattern. I'd meet a woman. Things would go well. 3 to 4 weeks into the relationship, the woman was saying the same thing. I care too much about you to stay in this relationship. Now think about that. That makes no sense. Wait a minute. You care about me, but you're leaving.
Right.
Why are you leaving? Well, here's the response that all of them said. I choose not to stay in this relationship because you are emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, I had no idea what the hell they were talking about.
Right.
I was a good guy, believed in monogamy. I was cool. I was in great shape, not a bad looking guy, fun to be with. What was missing is I didn't know how to connect. And that's what a lot of us as men struggle with. We don't know how to connect. Why? Because we've been conditioned to believe that we're not supposed to feel. And until we learn how to feel and connect with our authentic emotions and feelings, we can never connect. So my conversation with men is, are you willing to embrace this idea to connect with your feelings? And to a lot of men, that the F word is feelings. And men, like if you tell a man that he has feminine traits, I don't have no feminine traits, man. I'm a man. I'm a guy. I'm a masculine dude. No, we all have feminine energies. They're just energies.
Yeah.
Feminine energy, masculine energy. Masculinity is the energy of doing, and femininity is the energy of being. Our beingness, that's a feminine energy. It's not gender specific. It's just an energy. But again, we live in a culture that has conditioned men not to connect to that. And until we learn how to do that, we won't create true intimacy and connection in our relationships. And as men, will feel unfulfilled in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Powerful, man. Well, thanks for sharing your perspective on that. I think that there's a dealing with emotions that men have to reckon. And I think that, at the end of the day, it's your choice. Like everyone has a choice to choose however they want to be in life, right? If you want to be open to that or be willing to, that's all your choice. At the same time, I think that there's also an impact that we shouldn't ignore that women have on how men become, even moms. The conditioning piece that you're talking about. Mothers have a part to play with that too. They want their men to be tough. Now, there's an interesting dynamic when you look at the data of how many women actually are attracted to what are called bad boys, right? There's always been this uncanny, kind of weird attraction to men that they think are bad boys. the guys that are tough, the guys that they feel are going to protect them, the D-boys, if you will, in our generation. And I think that as I watch, I think that a lot of what you're talking about, I know you focus and you have a book that you've written about, how to live a life that's full over the age of 50, which is a great concept. And I want to talk more about that as well. And I think that as there's kind of a split I see sometimes. I have two sons, and I tried to raise them in a way that I wanted them to be tough because I knew the world wasn't going to have no pity on them, right? I wanted them to be tough to go out in the world and be able to survive. Nobody's going to give you no breaks, but you take what you want, right? Not stealing from people, but you go out and you be aggressive and you take what it is that you want. That's what women have done. Hey, we want to have independence. We want to have this for our lives. They did the same thing. They went and got it, right? They went and got the education. They went and got the jobs. They went and did it. So I think men have to be the same way. So I wanted them to be prepared to go out into life and be who they need to be to create the opportunities for themselves that they wanted. At the same time, I wanted them to be able to be to acknowledge their emotions and their feelings. And we still have conversations about this because I think it's important. So there's a delicate balance I think that men have to really create for themselves, that they're okay. And then also, like I talked about that bad boy thing, being with the woman who is okay with you showing your emotions and not considering you to be a weakling or someone who can't protect them if the need arises in those kinds of situations, right? Because again, let's face it, man, women do a lot of women do they like that bad boy element. I've always been the guy I'm a good dude, kind of like you. I'm a good looking guy. I got great conversation. I'm pretty fit. I have a lot of things I offer, but I also had this side of me that's like, hey, you mess with my girl, you mess with my family, you don't know what you might get out of me, right? So, and I think that's also attractive to a woman. So men have got to, I think, figure out how to balance all of that, to be able to show their emotions and maybe deal with their lady, whoever they're with, maybe seeing them in a different light. And the women need to be coached too on how to support that man as he opens up and shares those most intimate and vulnerable parts of himself. So I think it's a dual responsibility, right?
Sure. Now, again, from my perspective, since I focus primarily on the changing roles of manhood and masculinity,
Mm-hmm.
I focus on men and how we think, what we believe, and how we feel.
Right.
But I wrote a book called A New Conversation with Men. And I actually had a cable television show based on that particular book.
Okay.
Again, for men of all races. But in the book, I share what I call the 5 illusions of manhood. Now, these 5 illusions are what drives most of negative male behavior. So let me share those illusions real quick. These 5 illusions. Illusion number 1 is to be a man, you must be non-emotional and disconnected. That's the illusion.
That's a lie. Yep.
Illusion number 2. To be a man, you must use sexual conquest as a gauge for manhood. Okay? Illusion number 3. To be a man, you must have money and material possessions. Okay? Illusion number 4. To be a man, you must have titles, positions, and power. And illusion number 5. To be a man, you must constantly compete with and try to outdo other men.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at those 5 illusions, okay, those 5 illusions are what drive most negative male behavior. So if you look at rap videos and so forth, that whole idea about sexual conquest and objectifying women, that's part of that illusion, okay? To be a man, you have to validate your masculinity by having sex. It's something that's been perpetuated since the beginning of time, okay? The challenge for us as men is to be willing to look at and address whether or not we're acting consistent with any of those illusions. And that's difficult to do.
Yeah.
Because the current masculine culture perpetuates those 5 illusions. And when a man starts talking about these, collectively men go, oh man, what are you doing? You're trying to call me a toxic masculinity, man. We as men who have done the work and share this message, we get attacked by men who haven't done the work because they can't understand where we're coming from.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is empowerment. If you're truly committed to living an extraordinary life, It begins in here and it begins in here. And when I say it begins in here, it's about the beliefs, perceptions, and assumptions that you have in your mind about what's real.
Yeah.
Because until you're willing to look at and examine those beliefs, those assumptions, those perceptions, your life can't change. One of my mentors is a guy named Wayne Dyer, Dr. Wayne Dyer. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but I'm a huge fan of his work, read all of his books.
Yep.
But he said this: if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So from a male perspective, if we change the way we look at things, number one, we become aware of those illusions and not act consistent with them, our lives will change for the better.
Yeah.
But again, it's difficult and challenging because the current paradigm of masculinity is very strong. It takes a lot of courage to go against the current paradigm. But then you have people like myself who say, you know what? I'm going to change the paradigm. Because Alvin Toffler, this guy named Alvin Toffler, he said something I thought was amazing. He said, never fight against a system that's not working. Create a new system that makes the old system obsolete.
Makes
so
sense.
rather than fight against the old system, what I'm saying is I'm introducing a new way of thinking, a new way of being for men, especially Black men, so that we change our mindsets about what's possible for us.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. I'm right with you. Right with you. I totally agree. And I think that, talking about that and bringing that from concept to reality is that's where the work is, right? And that's the work that you're doing. It's the work that I'm doing and the coaching that I do with people. And what does it look like to be that kind of man, right? And and I think the root of it is understanding where it came from, like you already mentioned, it's from how we grow up. It's the messages that we get as little boys even, and it through adolescence and through adulthood, it just becomes who you are. You believe that's who you are, and that's who you're supposed to be. But there is no who you're supposed to be. That doesn't exist. That's not true. It's who you choose to be. That's the truth. And we all have, if you have all your mental faculties, all your emotional faculties, and all those things work for you, and there's no other mental disabilities that you have, we all have the power to choose who we want to be and how we want to be. Again, that's not to negate what I mentioned earlier, that there are things that you're going to bump up against in other men, in women, in society, that you're going to have conflict. You're going to be conflicted about, and you're going to have to make a choice each time. No, I'm going to be open. I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to share myself, no matter what the consequences are that come out of that. And that, my friend, takes courage.
Yeah. And again, as a certified life coach, my job is to help people reframe how they think.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Because if you think about, the brothers in the restaurant that were having a conversation about the eradication of Black men, you see, they had fallen victim to this stereotype that Black men are an endangered species. Mm-hmm. You see, if you pay attention to mainstream media, it should be easy to see why some Black men may feel that way. Because we're constantly inundated and bombarded with images and messages and stories about Black men and the negative aspect of who we are. And so that's why I launched the Shatter the Stereotypes movement. So it is our job, especially as Black men, to shatter the stereotypes about who we are. And we can't do that by pointing fingers at the media, blaming racism. We know those things are real, but right. We have to be willing to do our own inner work and change our mindsets and hearts so that we can create what I'll call an extraordinary life. And so it's interesting that as a man who happens to be Black, I get a lot of pushback from Black people because of my optimism, right? So I consider myself to be an irrepressible optimist because the lens through which I see the world, okay? I don't deny the challenges. I see the challenges, but what I also see are possibilities. And so Absolutely. For me to see possibilities, a lot of people say, well, what about this? Racism. What about police brutality? I see all those things. But remember what my guy said? If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. I'm not denying what's real because those things are real. But what I'm focused on, where I focus my attention, is on what my intentions are.
Right.
Because I know that I have the power to create anything I set my mind to. I'm a firm believer in that. There's nothing I can't create. And my mom gave me a lesson when I was about 10. And I'll never forget this. And this is probably the foundation of why I've been successful in my life. My mom said this: Michael, if you want something badly enough, there's no one or no thing that can keep you from attaining it except you. Now,
Thanks.
That message, and I'm just truly grateful as a kid that message resonated so deeply within me. I've always believed that. Mm-hmm. And that's how I was able to be a high school dropout, but at the same time, climb the corporate ladder, be very successful, lose everything, pick myself back up, because I know if I want something badly enough, I'm responsible for making it happen.
That's right.
And so, again, that's a really difficult lesson to try to get to some people, because most people, unfortunately, would rather play victim and say that they're keeping me from having what I want.
Yeah.
The truth is, we may be victimized, but we never have to remain victims.
Yeah.
So no matter what outside circumstances we may be exposed to, we still have this unique ability to create whatever our heart desires. But it starts with our mindsets.
It's almost like the idea has more power than reality, which is crazy, right? I mean, we get crippled by the idea and the thought of a threat out there versus the actual threat.
Yeah.
And when you really start to peel the layers back, you know, like you're saying, you start to realize, bro, ain't nobody here but me. Like, you know, you hear stuff on the media, you hear things on the news, you read articles and all this stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, bro, who's knocking on your door, holding you back and going out and starting your own business? Like, you know, and I'm like you. I'm like, it's not that I ignore or I don't see some of the things that are out there. We know what redlining was like. You know, we know that the ghettos were created, you know, to keep people limited. We know all that stuff, and that's all true. And I think it still exists to some scale today. And that doesn't limit what you're capable of, right? And so, yeah, that is part of my mission too, is to inspire, you know, men and people to go out and create and you know, acknowledge that the challenges are there and still go out and take action on the things that are important to you. Yeah. What's got you stopped? And what's got you stopped? What's in the way? Let's talk about it.
It all starts with mindset. I can't stress that enough, because when I look at all the things I've accomplished in my short 62 years on this planet, okay? So I'm 62 years old. I honestly feel like I'm still in my 30s, but when I look at when I look at the progress this country has made in my short 62-year lifespan. Yeah. Now, once again, I'm a science guy. I love science and rational thought. So here's a rational thought, a very rational thought.
Bring it on.
The United States, as it stands, is approximately 250 years old. Approximately 250 years old. Mm-hmm. From the time I was born in 1960 till today, when I look at the progress that we've made as a country in this country's short history, how can I not be optimistic? Because the trajectory that I see that we're on is extremely positive. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, people are going to throw out, well, what about Trump? What about, you know, they're going to throw out all, and yes, there's evidence to support whatever your belief is. But from my perspective, if I look at the trajectory we are on as a country, we're moving in the right direction. We're not there yet, obviously, but I believe we will eventually get there. And it may not be in my lifetime, but I know that the trajectory that we're on is positive. Yeah. Now, I see everything through a spiritual lens. That's just the way I see it. I believe that there is a divine intelligence that created this universe and is still creating this universe. And we all have access to this intelligence. Now, you can call it God, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But I believe this intelligence knows exactly what it's doing. And it created this universe with an intention. And that intention is to ultimately create heaven right here on earth. And I believe that that is inevitable. That's just my perception, how I see it.
Sure.
Now, the key is, how do we get in alignment with that divine intelligence for our own lives? Well, the way we do that is we find our true purpose. And I believe every human being has a divine purpose. And when we connect to that purpose and trust divine intelligence to guide us to where we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to be doing to make the world a better place, then our lives have meaning and fulfillment.
Yeah.
And that's an inside job. That's not going to happen by you looking at the news and pointing fingers. It's about going within, connecting with something bigger than yourself. I call it divine intelligence, but having a relationship and an intimacy with that something and trusting it enough to guide you to fulfill your divine purpose.
Yeah.
So as I think about it, when I look at my divorce, possibly the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. But at the same time, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. My divorce was my wake-up call. My divorce was the universe's way of saying, Michael, you're not doing what you were put on this planet to do. So I'm sorry, but I got to take drastic measures to get your attention because you've got a job to do. Now, if I had not gone through my divorce and stayed on that societal roller coaster doing the things, everything society said I was supposed to do, I would have never become a writer. I would have never become a speaker. I would have never become a TV host. So as I mentioned earlier, every adversity, every challenge brings us a gift and a lesson if we're willing to look deeply enough.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. Most people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, right alongside that, once you find clarity about what it is that your mission is or whatever that is, we tend to, as human beings, beat ourselves up when we feel that we're falling short on whatever that is that we've set ourselves up, to believe that we're supposed to be doing. And, I think one of the other challenges that comes up, Michael, is that, not everybody sees the world the same way. And that is really why I started this podcast, because everything does matter. Everyone should be free to express whatever it is that they express. One of the things that I always tell people, I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, as long as you're not hurting someone else, you're not harming someone else's property, you're not harming someone else's family or threatening someone else's life, everything else is free game. Don't take anybody else's stuff. Take what's yours, and don't harm and don't bring harm to anyone else. These are basic moral guidelines. It's kind of the golden rules, if you will, if we live by. But when we start, what I see happening a lot of times is that we start getting stuck on each other's point of view. And because I don't see the world the way he does, now we're at odds. Dude, you don't have to see the world the same way as I do. It's okay. Create the way that you want, because at the end of the day, if we all are clear that we want to make a difference, and this is what I'm about, is making a difference. If we are all about making a difference in the world in a positive way, we'll all take different routes to get there. But at the end of the day, we'll end up at the same spot, and the world will be far better than what it is today. And I agree. I think that we're on a positive trajectory in this country. I'm 52 and 10 years younger than you. And, dude, what I've seen in my short lifetime, the differences that I see have been nothing short of amazing. What my grandparents and parents were not able to do that I am able to do, and that my kids are able to do even that I couldn't do. It's phenomenal. There's nothing stopping you from having the life that you want, man. So again, I acknowledge you for being that space, man, for being that opening so that people can see what they're capable of and what's possible for their life. It's beautiful.
Well, but two reasons I'm so optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
One is technology. The other is information. We now have access. Now, especially as Black folk, we got to realize this. We now have access to anything we want. Yeah. We have access to the technology. Nobody or no thing can keep us from accessing the technology and the information. So that means we can learn whatever we want to learn. But the amazing thing is, we have access to this technology, but it amazes me when I see, for example, I don't know if you heard about, did you see the Black News Channel that launched about a year ago, the BNC? It's called the Black News Channel.
I don't think so.
There was a cable channel called the Black News Channel that started.
Okay.
And it was funded by the guy that owns the Carolina Panther football team, this billionaire guy. Anyway,
Gotcha.
He's Indian, I think. But anyway, he funded this Black News Channel. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, a Black News Channel. How cool is that? But when you watch the channel, they were still perpetuating the same negative stories about black people as the ones we were complaining about. I'm thinking,
Wow.
Wait.
Is the channel still around? Is it still on?
It went bankrupt.
Oh, I'm at. Why is that, I wonder?
Yeah. Terrible programming.
Wow.
But the good news is that guy, Byron Allen, you're probably familiar with
Byron Allen.
that.
Yeah. No, Byron Allen. Yeah,
he
for sure.
owns the Weather Channel.
Yep.
He bought it. So I'm hoping that he relaunches it with a better staff, better crew, and hopefully more positive information.
Yeah.
But my point is, as black folk, we have to control our own media.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And if we're going to control our own media, why are we choosing to do what we've been preaching against for so long? So again, I'm an optimist. I see the world through an optimistic lens. So what do I share? I share positive, optimistic stuff.
Right.
Not that I'm denying the other stuff is there.
Right.
It's just that whatever you focus your attention on, you attract.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in the law of attraction. So I put out positive vibes. I get positive vibes back. And so from a media standpoint, and again, the reason for my optimism, think about it. We're on this particular platform right now. We can share this information around the globe for basically no money.
In seconds. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, think about that. Think about that. Around the globe, we can share this content, this information for basically nothing. So as black folk, we have the access to the technology, but are we willing to use it for our empowerment?
Yeah.
See, because I believe there's a new form of activism. Okay. The new form of activism is education. To me, that's the new form of activism. Gotcha. I consider myself an activist in the form of an educator. So if you think back in the 60s and what the activists had to do because we didn't have access to information and technology and so forth. So now that we do, why are we still doing what we were doing back in the 60s? So my point is that as black folk, and especially as black men, we have access to coaching, right? The industry of coaching is exploding. And yet a lot of black men are a little hesitant to invest in their own potential by hiring a coach.
Yeah. So
again, there's so many opportunities out there for us. We just have to be willing to embrace some of these opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. And I going back to what you said earlier around information and technology, because there's so much information out there, I think one of the things that we need to not lose focus on is the ability to do critical thinking. Because, and I see that I've got an educator that's going to be on the podcast here coming up in a couple of months. We're setting up the interview now, and one of the things we were talking about as we were creating that conversation was this lack of ability, not ability, but this lack of teaching in the school system, especially in the lower school areas, elementary school, middle school, of really teaching kids how to be critical thinkers. And when you don't have critical thinkers, you can be easily led astray on some of the things that you're talking about, like narratives that are being pushed at you that if you really look at it critically, you will realize it's propaganda. Like it's not even really real, right? And without that ability to really cut through those types of narratives critically and be able to make your own choices and decisions about the next move you want to make, you're kind of crippled. So I think that's also a missing piece that we could also add on. And right in line with what you're saying, I think the coaching piece is huge. I love coaching because I get a chance to make a difference with people and have them realize what they're capable of and creating a life that they want. But the thing that people come up against, I see even inside of my coaching sessions and just understanding how humans function, is this unwillingness to just acknowledge that, not that they were wrong, but that maybe they're looking at it in a way that's disempowering. Just consider it. You don't have to change or do anything. I'm not saying that the way you're looking at it, the way you're doing it is wrong. Just consider that if you looked at it this way, what possibilities might open up for you? Like what opportunities might you see if you chose to look at it this way versus the way you're looking at it? Yeah. You can or you can't. It's up to you. Not that you can, but if you're willing to or you're unwilling to, that's your choice, right? Yeah. So I think you're spot on with that, man. And the work that we do as coaches is so needed. And you can get decent coaching at a decent price these days. People aren't, there's some people that can offer some really great coaching at a really affordable price in many different areas. I'm a certified transformational coach myself, and I also like to work with high performers, people that really want to perform at a high level in leadership development, because I think leadership is one of the most powerful ways that we can tap into our potential, is to build and develop new and powerful leaders who can actually speak the language, who can actually inspire and encourage people to see the world in a different way. And that's the difference I'm committed to making.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I find when I'm working with Black men is to get them to recognize that we are men who happen to be Black. So unfortunately, too many times we so identify with being a Black man, which is absolutely nothing wrong with being proud of your ethnicity and all of that.
Right.
But a lot of Black men feel like to say I'm a man who happens to be Black is like denying their ethnicity, but it's not. It's identifying and pointing to their humanity, because who we are as human beings has nothing to do with our ethnicity. Our ability to think, to reason, to feel, those things have nothing to do with skin color.
Yeah.
And it's a real challenge to get that mind shift that I am a man who happens to be Black, but I'm a man first.
Right.
And that's a really challenging conversation to have with Black men, because once again, we feel like, don't deny I get attacked the saying that I'm denying my ethnicity, which I'm not. I'm simply affirming my humanity.
Right. You're human. You're a human first, then you're a man. And then if you want to consider yourself to be a Black man, then okay, go ahead. And I'm very proud to be a Black man too. I think it's something that I love it, man. Love it. I think we have which is why we do what we do, right? Because it's like, bro, like you have so much available to you. If you could just see it for yourself.
Yeah.
And take action on what you see, dude, there's nothing that can stop you. Nothing.
Yeah.
But yourself.
And you're another reason for my optimism when I see brothers like yourself, because I know we're out there, right?
Absolutely.
We're out there. We're doing, I'm associated with a lot of organizations that's specifically designed for Black men and Black male empowerment, which is great. And again, it fuels my optimism. But the fact that you and I are even having this conversation today gives me reason for optimism, that there are other brothers out there like myself who are committed to empowering. And that inspires me. That inspires.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely correct. And it inspires me. When I met you, I'm like, this brother's doing some stuff. We can probably do some stuff together, because I'm always looking for people that I can partner with. Right. And right away, you plug me into another brother that that has a network. And you're like, hey, Bradford, talk to this guy. He can maybe get your podcast broadcast on a more national, international scale. I'm like, dude. So just the networking piece that you and I had within a matter of 15 minutes was powerful. Yeah. I met another guy there when I was in Dallas, when I was in the Houston area. I went to Dallas to visit some friends. I met another guy who has a nonprofit he just started that's mentoring young Black men, And I'm like, dude, let's partner. I'll come to Dallas. I can speak to the kids, spend time with the kids, mentor the kids. So you're right, man. There's a lot of people. And you know what? And it's not just Black men.
Exactly.
There are a lot of men, period, Black, white, Latino, that are looking to make a difference in these communities, man. No matter what the community, they want to make a difference in the world. And when you're looking to make a difference in the world, you can focus on your particular area of expertise or area of focus or area of interest. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you're really making an impact on the overall, scope of humanity, which I think is powerful and inspiring. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Well, once again, I like to think of myself as an optimist, and putting it in a spiritual context. There are some people who believe that we are undergoing a great awakening, that human beings are still evolving, and we're evolving there's a woman named Barbara Marx Hubbard.
Okay.
Wrote a powerful book called Conscious Evolution. And she says, human beings are still evolving. And she says, we're evolving from what we know as Homo sapiens to what she calls Homo universalis. And Homo universalis is the evolution of humanity where we as human beings recognize our oneness. Now, that's a difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp, but for me, it's a truth. There's a divine intelligence that created all of this. This intelligence knows exactly what it's doing, and it's using us as human beings as the expressions to help it create heaven on earth. And again, that's Michael Taylor's perception of
Sure.
reality, if you will. But again, that's another reason why I'm so optimistic, because I believe in this divine intelligence and it knows what it's doing, and human beings are still evolving.
There it is. And, really, if you leave the United States, and I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist in other places, but it's probably worse here than in any other place in the world. When I talk to other people who live in other countries, I coach people from all over the world, and man, the stuff that they see on the news here and the stuff that they hear about, and they're like, man, that stuff doesn't, like, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but they're like, dude, like, we don't care what color you are.
Yeah.
Like, we just living our life. Like, you do what you do, and I have friends, like, and it's fascinating for them.
Yeah.
So I think that racism in itself is a created context and concept that was designed to create division, to stifle, and to delay this evolution that you're talking about towards a consciousness of that we're all one, you know, and and that's where the critical thinking comes into play, right? That I was mentioning earlier, when you can critically look at it and say, hey, hold on a second, wait a minute now, hold on, like, why don't I like this guy? Like, and you think about it, it's like, I don't even know why I don't like him. I don't have a reason. It's insane, you know, and you can get out of that rut that you're in and actually be able to start doing things differently, man, and creating a life that you love. So I want to let's step back, right? We both talked about childhood. We both talked about how, we are conditioned, and whether it's wiring or whether it's not wiring, a complete condition, whatever it might be that causes men to become the way that we are. I want to give you a chance to talk about where you see your ability and your intention of impacting our young people, because we know that's where it starts, right? So what do you see right now if you look out into the youth landscape? What's happening in our world? What do you see that's missing with regards to supporting our youth and creating this future that we want to have out in decades to come? What do you see?
Well, if you look at our public school system, a couple of things that are missing. First of all, I don't believe our system pays teachers enough, invest enough in our teachers, because the teachers lay the foundation for our kids' lives. Because the most important aspect of a child's life is between birth and 7.
Right.
Science proves that, the psychology.
That's right.
But when you take these kids and you put them in this school system where the teachers aren't prepared really to deal with a lot of the challenges these students have, it's difficult for us to expect our kids to come out of the system, if you will, better human beings. So I think what's missing, and I don't think this is the public schools' responsibility. What's missing is what I call emotional education, emotional intelligence. What we're missing is we're not teaching our kids how to deal with their emotions from an early age. So what happens is these kids come out of these really violent environments, right? And so they come out of this environment, you put them in school temporarily, but they're dealing with all this trauma and they don't know how to deal with it. So what do? They act out. So you see these kids acting out in school, which is the result of the environment that they come from. So what has to happen, I believe, is, and it's already happening in some ways, where you're seeing people launch charter schools, where a charter school doesn't have to follow the regular curriculum of school. And so I've actually created an entire curriculum and it's a company that specifically deals with youth empowerment. And I'm super excited about it. It's my big purpose, my big dream in life. But it starts in first grade. And it builds up through high school. The program is designed to provide what I call life skills training. From a very early age. And life skills begins with getting kids in touch with how they feel and giving them the tools to deal with those feelings. For example, when you see a kid acting out in school, let's say elementary school, a lot of them are just reacting because of the environment they come from. So one thing that I teach is meditation. And what meditation does is it allows you to put a gap between a thought and an action. So when a child experiences trauma at home, they go to school and their classmate calls their mom ugly or something, and the kid smacks him in the head. It's what they call a trauma response, right? They're reacting because of some emotional trauma, and it was triggered, and they just reacted. Well, meditation teaches them how to stop before they react, become aware that, oh, I'm triggered, and giving them that awareness. Now they won't lash out and hit that other kid. Right. So what we need to do is we need to put in these programs that teach youth how to do that. Yeah. Starting early, because what is bullying? Bullying is just a trauma response. The kid is coming from an environment of being bullied, so now they're bullying. So we have to break that cycle. And one way to break that cycle is to give the kids the emotional awareness, emotional tools to deal with that stuff. And that's where I think we need to go in our public school system. We need to stop having kids memorize stuff that they'll never use.
Right. Yeah, right.
And give them the life skills to deal with their emotions because kids can be taught empathy and compassion. Oh, yeah. And all those things are available. So our system needs to just shift towards that more so than just having them memorize stuff.
Right. Yeah. And these teachers are so under pressure, so under stress to get, like you said, to get test scores. I mean, they get bonused on how their kids score in tests and these standardized tests. And they have no time or no energy to put into the important things that you're talking about, teaching kids how to deal with stress, how to deal with trauma, how to deal with events that happen. I saw a very inspiring little video on either Facebook or Instagram this week. And it was two boys, they're brothers. One of the little boys might have been 6 years old, and his little brother must have been about 3. And his brother, the 3-year-old, was getting frustrated because the video controller wasn't working, or he couldn't find it, or something he was getting. He was starting to have a tantrum. The 6-year-old tells his 3-year-old brother, "Okay, just stop and just take a deep breath. Just stop, just take a deep breath. Just breathe in deep." And he's coaching him through a breathing exercise. Wow. And within about, 15 seconds, brother, the little 3-year-old calmed down. They looked around and found the controller, and they started playing the game. And it took him completely out of his element, not out of his element, but out of that tantrum that he was getting ready to go into. So I think that it points right to what you're talking about. And the guy's 3. This kid's 3 years old. If you can teach a kid that, and when they're young, it's like everything else. It becomes automated, right? You see it, you recognize it. I'm triggered. I know what this comes from. It's because what happened when I was 2 years old, my big brother, or with my neighbor down the street did this, and I know that's where the trigger comes from. I don't have to respond this way if I don't want to. Right. And now so you're empowered. Yeah.
And so giving kids those tools is how we'll start minimizing and eliminating these random school shootings and all of this. Because, again, it's all trauma responses to unresolved emotional conflict. And, again, I think that needs to be a part of our educational system. And I've actually developed a company that does that. So looking forward to that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Are you ready to share the name of the company right now, or are you still in the process? You want to come back at a later time and share it?
Oh, yeah.
Or is there a website?
Yeah, they can log on to toocoolclub.com. That's TOOCOOL club.com. And I'm actually in the process of putting together investors because it is a profitable company. And the unique thing about it is not only does it teach emotional intelligence, but it's also designed to teach entrepreneurship. The kids can actually start their own companies by selling our products. And so, it's a pretty unique approach to youth empowerment.
Very cool. Very cool. So as y'all heard, Mike was looking for investors. So if you want to get invested into a great cause, anybody that's out there that wants to invest in something that's really going to make a difference for our youth, get in touch with Michael. And Michael, right along those lines, as we wrap this interview up, man, it's been amazing. So much great information you've shared. I'm so inspired, man. And I'm ready to go work, man. I mean, you got me lit up, bro. So I appreciate everything you shared today. So how do people find you on social media, Michael, if they want to follow what you're doing, follow your work? Every move you're making, find your books. Where can they go?
Yeah, so they'll go to CoachMichaelTaylor.com, and that's Michael, Michael. Some people say EAL, but AEL, CoachMichaelTaylor.com. Log on to their website. You can find connections to all my social media property at Coach Michael Taylor on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, at Coach Michael Taylor.
Got it. Easy to find. Well, Michael, man, so again, brother, thank you for being here on the podcast today, man, and taking your time out of your day to share everything that you share with us. And I just thank you for everything that you're doing, man, and all the work that you're doing with men, with Black men, with young people, and with everything that you're up to, bro. I'm so proud of you, man.
And kudos to you, man, because see, you're shattering stereotypes, okay? From a black male perspective, there's this stereotype that we don't support each other. So again, I want to acknowledge you for giving me the invitation to let me share on your platform. I appreciate that, and I will definitely reciprocate that, and I'll have you on mine. But again, it's important that we, especially as black men, work together 100%. To transform our lives. And we can no longer point fingers out there. We got to point fingers here and here. So again, kudos to you, man, for your platform and what you're doing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man. Have a great day, brother. We'll see you soon, okay? Take care.
Take care.
This is Doris Brown's baby boy. We out.